Hello, everybody. In this video today, I thought I'd talk about the question, why is it so hard to focus? And, I noticed this even in myself, like, for example, when I'm watching a video on YouTube, listening to like a podcast video on YouTube, or reading, I'll have these like intrusive thoughts come in. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but these intrusive thoughts typically are about either plans that I have going on, like in the day or in the weeks coming up, or ideas, like things that, I associate with other things. Like if I'm listening to a YouTube video or I'm watching a YouTube video on something, and whatever they're talking about in the video makes me think about something else, right? I'll tend to get distracted with that other thing. My attention will go to that other thing, right? And I'll stop listening to what I initially was listening to, right? Now I think this problem is very typical, like for example with students in class. I guess that's like a very typical thing. And also adults, I think, when you're explaining something, like let's say at a course, and like the course is it's a training course or whatever, and let's say it's like an hour long, I think adults will get distracted. And nowadays we have, what was so interesting to me was that like a couple of years ago, maybe like 10 years ago, when cell phones were becoming a thing, or they had been a thing, but they were starting to gain more momentum, people would say, oh, you can't have your cell phones out at work, right? And now it's like so common for people to just have, or be on their cell phones while working, right? That's so common. Like all you have to do is like this video I was watching of, like, you just have to run around really fast, right? Look busy. As long as you look busy, right? Like serious, intense, people will just stay out of your way. So if like you're in a meeting or even at school and like your cell phone rings, or you just basically, like I've seen students like get their cell phones and they just walk out of, like, oh, like I'm attending a call, right? Like I'm gonna this is important, or this is urgent, and that's all you got to do. And you could just literally be faking and like be on your social media scrolling, right? Now I'm going to get into this too, because this is the difference between using technology for entertainment, which is something that I've been exposed to a lot recently, and using technology for serious professional or academic reasons, like for work. So yeah, this happens with students and some people that maybe you're just speaking to, that just aren't paying attention, right? Or they get distracted with their thoughts, kind of like what I was saying, because I'm guilty of this too. Like you'll be listening to someone and then you'll think about something, and then you'll just focus on whatever you're thinking and you'll stop listening, right? That's what getting distracted means. It doesn't mean that you just, that you're not focusing your attention anywhere, which that can happen as well, right? That's something else. I think that's like a source of like disconnection meditation, right? Which where you're just like not thinking about anything. But that's kind of weird to do when you're with someone or when you're engaged in an activity, right? You can't just like disconnect, even though people do, right? But that's kind of weird if you really think about it. Typically what happens is that they focus they channel their attention towards something else, right? And then they get distracted with that other idea. They start using their phones, right? So I don't know why this happens. It can either be because they're busy. This has happened with me. Like maybe they need to write something down that you just said, or they need to write something down that they just thought about, or maybe they're just straight up bored with whatever you're saying, and they're kind of like, whatever, like I'm just gonna get on my excuse me, I'm just gonna get on my phone, right? Or they just start doing something else, right? Now this is the fallacy of the multitasking idea. I think it's a fallacy because you really can't tend to two or three things at once. People will say that. What I've always thought about multitasking is that you switch very quickly between one thing and the other. So it's like, I don't know, they always talk about the famous example of a mother, right? That's doing like 10 different things at once. she's cooking dinner, whatever. She's I think the light was going on. She's cooking dinner. She's doing homework with her son. She's cleaning the uniforms or whatever. She's washing clothes. She's feeding the cat and the dog. She's like, I don't know, like she's doing a bunch of things, and she's like an expert at it. And it's like, no, that's just work. Like if you go to a workplace and you have different things, different activities you need to be doing, especially when you're really busy, that's just how you operate. That's humans operating under stress, right? Now multitasking is see, the idea of multitasking ideally is this idea where you're doing multiple things at once, which I think is possible, but it's not in the way that we think it's possible, right? Um, so, for example, you're focusing on the video, right? And then all of a sudden you say, "Oh, I need to, I don't know, register some numbers." So you start to register some numbers, but hey, guess what? Now you're no longer listening to the video, right? People will talk about music like playing in the background, and that's fine, but you're not really paying attention to it. You're not listening to it consciously, mentally. It's just you're hearing it, right, with your unconscious, right? So yeah, the fallacy of multitasking is that it's not really possible. And when you say you're multitasking, you actually stop paying attention to the first thing that you were doing, right? You'll say, "Oh yeah, I can do this and this at the same time. I can be on my phone." I've heard that. Like, I can be on my phone and I'm listening to you, and it's like, no, you're not. you know or not, at least not in a good way. At least not, you're not doing it efficiently. You're gonna get, you're not gonna be able to take in all of the information that I'm saying. You're not gonna be able to think about it, process it, associate it with something. You're not gonna be able to give me feedback, right? You're not gonna be able to ask questions or clarify. You're just gonna be like, it's like I'm talking to a wall. So that's kind of like the thing. There's also a problem which I want to talk about with retention and working memory. So this is interesting because memory has a lot of different categories. There's long-term, short-term memory. There's working memory, which is the memory that you use in the moment to listen to someone talk. Like if you're listening to this video right now and you're listening to what I'm saying and you're paying attention to what I'm saying, you're using your working memory, right? Which is the memory that keeps track of things from moment to moment, from second to second, right? So it could be like a retention problem, because if you're explaining a sequence of something, right? Like first I woke up, and then kind of like a story. I don't know why it's easier to remember stories, right? Or narratives. Like if I tell you I woke up late and then blah, 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 I did this, I did that, and then I arrived late to my job. And then you can kind of like associate, well, that's because you woke up late, right? But you'll remember this stuff. It's different than if I'm explaining a procedure such as how to register on an online website, right? The way in which you register is first you need to input, your name, blah blah blah, and then, but you're gonna be like, hold on, let me write this down because it's too much information, right? And that's what I'm referring to. I'm referring to procedural memory, which is the know-how, which in memory terms, it's actually the memory that we use to like walk, right, or talk, or I think even like blink and our heartbeat, and right, like all this stuff is already so ingrained in us as adults that we just automatically know how to do it. Now, what's interesting is that if you were to ask someone like, why do you do it, or how, no, not why, how do you do it, it would be like kind of hard to explain, right? It's like I was just reading again about the rites of passage and why so many tribes, universities, like the Alpha, Beta, Kappa, Omega, and military people will have the rites of passage, right? Where they like basically humiliate you, beat you up, call you names, right? You need to do an initiation at the beginning of your college, semester, your first semester, or the first time you go into the army, or the first time that you are going to become a man, like in the tribes, in the Native American tribes, or I think they do it in the Asian. I'm not sure about that. Leave it in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But I know it's Native Americans that do it, and Latin American tribes. also, where they do an initiation process. And Robert Cialdini in his book Influence, the Psychology of Influence, was talking about, but why is this so important? Because they try to eradicate it on college campuses after some people were dying. And because they were so harsh, like, they would basically like starve people, like if they were really hungry, or really thirsty, right? Like, I don't know what that was, but if they were really thirsty, they would basically like, yeah, like starve them to death. Like they wouldn't feed them, and some of them, or they would leave them out in the cold for a long time. And I guess this one guy like tripped and he fell, and he couldn't get back up, and since he was alone, he just spent the rest of the night there and he died. So they're trying to eradicate this, and they can. So then they like he ponders this question, like, why is it so important? And that's the procedural, like the knowing why. And also, well, I guess that's a different thing, right? Because that's knowing why, that's not really knowing how. But what I'm referring to is like, you do things and you either don't know why you're doing them or how you're doing them, right? And that's the main point here. So how to solve this? How to solve not being able to pay attention, or why it's hard to focus? I say, well, the question is how to solve it or not. You can even use it, because what I sometimes do is, like, if I'm listening to something or I'm reading and I get an idea or a plan or whatever, you need to have like a handy dandy notebook or your cell phone and open up notes and just jot those notes down, right? Write them down, write those plans down, those ideas down, because I think that may be, in essence, like the start of creativity, right? Like where you get insight on something, right? Kind of like the story of Newton and the apple falling on his head, and him like realizing, this is gravity, after like years of research and investigation. So it's kind of something like that, right? Now there's another idea, which is when something captivates you, it is because you're engaged and you're actually interested in it, right? And this is based on your ideology, right? Like Andrew Bustamante would say, your interests and your preferences. And I'm actually going to be analyzing interest, right? I wanna make a contribution to the analysis of interest and why different people like different things, right? Even like if you're born in the same family, you and your brothers are alike, but you all have different personalities and like different things, right? So yeah, it's something that captivates you, that's not going to distract you, right? Like typically a movie you really like, or a series you're really into, right? Or someone you're really interested in listening to, and you're like, I'm really focused right now, and I'm not having a hard time at all focusing. In fact, I'm not even thinking about anything else. Like I'm just engaged in what you're saying, right? I think that's also gold, right? Um, and then just last but not least, that idea that I said in the beginning, entertainment versus work. Some people, and Andrew Bustamante was saying this, and I think he's right. He says social media is not real media. It's not journalism. It's just entertainment, right? And a lot of people will use that as like a news source, right? Like I get my news from social media, from Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And it's like, I've never believed in news to begin with, so it's not even like a thing to me, because I don't even believe like the real news or the real journalism or whatever, because I know everything is rigged, everything is subjective, everything is tainted by people's interests, right? Preferences. Um, but yeah, just this idea of like, how now at work, the line between, entertainment and work is kind of blurred, and everything just kind of intermingles, right? Like you could be at work on your phone and, like I said, just look a little busy, and you could be scrolling through social media and people will think you're working, right? So I think you can get away with a lot of things nowadays, because there's no clear regulation or division between, and this is thanks to technology, right? Technology is doing this, because I was watching an interview with Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about AI and how it's become like so developed. And the idea I came to was that, AI is like supposedly so developed, and he would constantly be saying with the other guy, we don't really know where this is taking us. We don't know what this means, right? And I was just reading Nietzsche today, and he was talking about how fear is what fuels morality, right? Fear, like you're afraid of, you need salvation, and that's why you're religious. He was very anti-religious, anti-Christian, and then I thought about like technology and this whole idea of AI and everything, and I'm like, well, we created a AI, right? And I say we really don't have anything to fear. We just think that AI is going to like maybe harm us or something like that, right? Like we're unsure about what it is, but I think all that insecurity, and in fact maybe everything in life, is fueled by fear, right? Which is the first primitive emotion. But I look at it kind of like a bodyguard. AI kind of protects us, makes our life easier, right? Because that's what technology ultimately does, right? It protects us, it helps us, it aids us when we need it, right? It makes our life more comfortable. So to be afraid of humanity's bodyguard, technology is like humanity's bodyguard, is kind of absurd, right? That's like if you hire, like this big, tall, buff dude to protect you with weapons, and then you're afraid of him, right? It's like you did that, right? That's kind of how I look at humanity right now, looking at AI like all afraid, right? Because we fear the unknown, but it's like we made that, and that's for us, only for us, right? Like animals aren't using AI or whatever, right? So I thought I'd just get into some of those ideas. Let me know what you think. And that's all I got for this video. So I'll see you in the next one. All right. Peace.